Welcome back to Flight Past. My name's Simon, and we are flying over the battlefield of Waterloo. And we've started to talk about the second phase, basically, of the battle. It begins about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and what we have is the formations of Napoleon's corps streaming across this battlefield over here, essentially where my white dot is here, going up towards this ridge in this direction here. And they are in a echelon formation, leading units are coming down either side of this road here where my dot is, and then sort of in a imagine geese flying. The V is kind of on the road, and they're pulling back this way. And Napoleon has learned his lesson from observing Wellington's tactics, and he's setting up this sort of new formation that increases the size of his front, but maintains a column size bulkness. So they described that their frontage was around about 150 yards, so approximately probably about 150 meters, and around about 35 odd yards in depth. And because they have this echelon sort of formation, it allows battalions to move around behind each other. So a battalion is they're like kind of behind each other, and if they want to form a line, they can move quickly along. So let's we're just over the French rear now. This is the this place down here for people who are watching for the first time. There's a building on this road just about here, which is Waterloo, which was I think it's actually here. Waterloo is this place here. This was Napoleon's headquarters on the evening before. And then he was using a farm called Rossom as his forward base. We'll just come back round, and we can see now the road and the way that the French attacked. So they're moving towards La Haye-Sainte. They're on either side of this road, and in an echelon formation moving up. So we'll sweep up here as if we're the French. Quiot's brigade was advancing towards the sandpit where we mentioned where the 95th Rifles were, which is just where this white dot is here. And 2 more brigades moved behind them up this slope here. And they did have some cavalry support and some light artillery with them. Let's just pause here, and we can jump out. And so, okay, this is the area that we're talking about then. British are on the right, French are on the left. So we'll come around behind the French position, and essentially you're getting a this is the area here where they will be advancing across. In terms of numbers, you need to think probably in the region of 18,000 men are moving across these this field here at around about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, with cavalry support on their flanks. And the Grand Battery, which I believe this is the intermediate ridge where they would have been held. They are here. They're and they have 80 guns along this ridge here, and they're firing up onto the other ridge. And so their intention is to soften up any infantry formations over there on that ridge. They have to stop firing for a bit to allow the French columns to move past them. But then I think they open up again when the French get down into this area here, and that allows the artillery to continue firing over their heads. So you can see the sort of tactics that the French are using. They're using these sort of large, almost like they're like large rectangles in bulk to keep your men moving forward up this slope here, and you're giving them fillip by having cavalry support on one side and the Grand Battery firing their weapons. So you would be, it's that rolling barrage kind of thing that you get in World War One. You've got that sort of feeling that whatever's up here on this ridge is going to be pretty much terrified by the time you get there. Guy, good, thank you. Quite innovative on his formation. Yes, I think so. And I'm not sure if he thought it up on this day here. I mean, on the actual day, or he had plans. Always had plans to do it. I can't remember reading about him trying this formation out anywhere else. I'll have to have a look, see where he would have got the idea from. But I don't think Napoleon was so hands-on that he would have told them to do this. So it was definitely something that he probably had from the Peninsula. And by the way, we will look at the Peninsular War in the future. We'll follow Wellington's travels around Portugal and Spain and France, southern France, in another playlist, and we'll see then if we can find this sort of clues as to where he gets this idea from to change his tactics. And of course, you're talking about 25 years of war here, so by this point, a lot of these soldiers or the tactics have been well worked out. And they're kind of tweaking minor things rather than sort of major ones. But thank you for that. So at this time as well, we know that Wellington moves across and need to check on Picton's position. Now these buildings here I don't think were there on the day. I do believe that somewhere around here was Wellington's, known as Wellington's elm tree. So you can ignore some of these buildings here. And but Wellington comes over here to check on Picton, and he does his whole sort of making sure that they're in this sort of dead ground area here, essentially. Now there is Allied artillery just trying to get here. This is a sunken road. This is the Olhain Road here, which is runs east-west. It's known as the sunken lane. You can probably see it's probably been filled in over the years, but it was supposed to be a pretty steep sort of bank that you could would essentially sometimes a surprise cavalry, you know, soldier could stand up in it and not be hurt. Probably varies in different places. Mercer talks about other places where he could get his cannons on here that could fire over the bank down. So the positions are quite deep, but not that deep, if you know what I mean. And of course, this road as well is a good thing for moving your Royal Horse Artillery to different places on the battlefield, trying to get come to the crisis point. So around about this time, with these, imagine an echelons of columns of infantry moving up this this slope. You can see the way the terrain undulates all the way down. And at this point, the Allied artillery opens up against the advancing French columns. This point as well is believed that the Duke of Wellington orders the 1st Light Battalion of Taylor's brigade to move across this Genappe Road to support the 95th Rifles. So maybe we can assume Wellington is in this sort of area here, and he's telling the 95th Rifles are in this essentially this area here, which was a sand pit, a gravel pit. It's believed that he recognizes at the time that Bering's men, remember we were talking about Bering in the last stream, he recognized that they were in a precarious position, but he couldn't get any reinforcements to him. Now, Quiot's brigade is moving up here, and essentially what happens is the 95th Rifles in this pit here are denying them the ability to move up here, so they actually have to move slightly to the right, go further east to keep away from the 95th Rifles in that sandpit. And so now he's coming, the French are coming up this slope here, directly towards the Allies. And it's at this point that Bylandt's Belgians take flight. Now, it's not known whether they take flight, as in they actually rout, or it's just that the officers say, look, this is ridiculous. We're basically sitting ducks here. And then they sort of order their men back. Because they pull back probably into this area behind here, and they manage to rally. Now, that doesn't sound to me like a mass panic. It does sound like, yes, they may have hurried to get off the battlefield as soon as one of the officers tells them to move back. But they managed to rally reasonably quickly. And it turns out that by land, they've obviously been taking a bit of a pounding from artillery, but these guys, when they come back here, they actually end up being rallied, and then they don't come into essentially musket range all day long of the French. This meant that there was a small readjustment needed to be done on the line, the Wellington's line, and it turns out that Kemp's brigade has found itself now directly in the path of Quiot's brigade, and Pack's brigade is in front of Donzelet's French division. Now remember, these guys are here, and they're not standing up. Remember, they're down, keeping low, and trying to avoid the artillery. And so the French are coming up this slope towards them, and they are they're not aware that they're here. Well, they know there's something here, but they don't know where they are. This is the time as well that the cuirassiers are in this sort of area somewhere around here, engaging Bering's men in the orchard at the same time. Now, what happens is that if you remember, Limburg battalion, the Hanoverians had just sort of were coming up to support Bering, and they get caught out in this action, and they describe it as the cuirassiers were heading into the rear of Bourgeois' left in covered ground. So it could be that they were in somewhere here. The Hanoverians were coming down here, and they get caught by the cuirassiers, and they don't have enough time to form square, and these guys are broken. Now, Bering's men are also caught, so we could be describing somewhere in this area here, but these guys could run back into the farmhouse quickly, and so these other Hanoverians were broken and ran back. So the Erlon's divisions, by the way, were in his corps were led by Alex, Donzelot, Marconnet, and Duret, and as I said, they were constituted around about 18,000 men. Some of the questions around this attack is that they didn't believe there was enough cavalry support. This was an attack that was delegated to Ney and Erlon from Napoleon, and there doesn't seem to be enough cavalry support on this attack. Because you could imagine that if you just had cavalry interspersed with these marching columns, then you'll be forcing the British into square, and that immediately then reduces your line footage for firing on. So. Now, the formations that we have, of course, are maybe experimental for this day from de Erlon, this sort of large rectangles in lines of battalions. And they're very good, I suppose, because they would actually get up here and then they can quickly form a line if they needed to, but they still got the sort of slight impact. The problem is, without cavalry support, these formations are probably difficult to form square from, and that has consequences later on. So somewhere around here, as I say, was an elm tree, and it was known as Wellington's elm tree. It basically and interesting enough, it was actually purchased by an Englishman after the battle and cut down because and made into souvenirs. So if you are going through your attics or sheds or whatever it is, and you come across some memorabilia that looks old and wooden. You may possibly have something that was made out of Wellington's elm tree. The tree was described as being standing at the junction of the road from Braine-l'Alleud to Wavre, and the main Brussels to Charleroi chaussee, which is essentially this crossroads here. And they described it as being a few hundred yards north of La Haye-Sainte, which is fine, and near to the sandpit. So we got the French artillery coming up this slope. Now they're getting badly mauled by the British artillery on this ridge. Remember that the Duke of Wellington has told his artillery not to fire on the French guns, which will be over there on that sort of middle distance, to refrain from firing on the French guns. They wanted to be fresh and pour a mixture of canister and shot into these columns. They're kind of like large canisters with musket balls in it, and that exploded out. It's like a big shotgun, basically. And so you doesn't have the range of a cannonball, but it would probably be devastating to a column of infantry, probably from here to say about here would be pretty devastating if you were in the way of that. The guns were to remain in action essentially until they're almost overrun. The last shot of these artillery pieces would probably be within, when the infantry are within 50 yards of the position. And then the artillery guys would essentially abandon the guns and retreat behind the infantry behind them. And so this sort of, again, another backwards and forwards thing is that if the guns were available, they'd come out and fire them, and if they were threatened, then they would come back into the infantry lines. But there is reports at the time, that it wasn't all professional. A lot of these artillerymen actually were reported to have fired their guns and then just left the battlefield. It was even reported that one of the sergeants actually spiked his own gun. But there's always reports of this sort of things happening. Wellington would express at the time his disappointment with the behaviour of the artillery, especially at this moment. He didn't, and in this area, he felt that they weren't coming back to their positions when they could. He wrote a letter to the Earl of Mulgrave on the 21st of December 1815 to express his disappointment. And that's the sort of criticism that sort of stuck with the artillery and the reputation of the artillery, the British artillery at Waterloo for a few years. Okay, that's a good time to just pause again. We will continue the talk of this attack. So we're here. It's probably around about 2:30. The French columns are coming towards us. We fired our artillery 50 yards away. We're going to now run back and get into behind our infantry. So when we come back, we'll see what happens then. If you've enjoyed listening to this, then please give a like and subscribe. I'm a small channel, just growing. And if you like and subscribe, you'll be one of the very early people and get involved with the production of this channel. Right, so for all those who are watching live, I will be back in a couple of minutes. And for everyone else on YouTube, just press the next button and you'll get the next video.